Okay, going live here on a Sunday night on AMP. You can also check us out on YouTube. Make sure you smash that like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the Volumes YouTube channel. Here with my main man, Colin Cowherd, right as free agency. Let's face it, I mean, it really kind of starts at the combine when they're not supposed to tamper. All the deals are done. But over the next 3 or 4 days, the madness is, I mean, it's already started with the couple trades that happened over the weekend, but I think it's time to buckle up here, Colin.
Yeah, the Jalen Ramsey move, a third and basically a bust tight end from the Dolphins who just doesn't play much is that's not nearly, I'm not sure why they were so impatient. It feels like a salary dump. They're trying to clear something up to make a big move in free agency. That's what it felt like to me. Now, I don't think Jalen Ramsey's ever been a guy you build a culture around. At Florida State, Jacksonville, or LA. He's just really talented. But I think the guys that you build a culture around, like Aaron Donald or Cooper Kupp, are harder to get rid of. Talent comes and goes. And so I think Jalen's really talented. He had a very good last game with the Rams, an interception. I'm not sure if it was the best place for the Dolphins to spend money. They already have a corner people like, but their secondary's not very strong. They're all in. But for the Rams, it just felt like they're starting over. They've got 4 7s, 4 5s. They now have a second, 2 thirds. They don't have a first or a fourth yet. So they got 12 draft picks. They're kind of rebuilding this puppy.
All right, the NFL season is officially over. So we got March Madness coming up, final stretch of the NBA, the NHL season. Now is the time. You want tickets? Check out the Game Time app. It's the fastest growing ticket app. They got you covered. March Madness tickets, NBA tickets, playoff tickets, NHL tickets. Game Time. They also do comedy shows. They also do concerts. Anything you want to attend, check out the Game Time app. And right now, $20 off your first purchase. How? Download the Game Time app and use the redeem code Colin. Me, COLIN, $20 off your first tickets. Comedy, concerts, we got March Madness. You got to be at those games. NHL, NBA, final stretch run. The Game Time app, last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Before we dive into my theory on the Dolphins and why I think this might be leading to something, one thing on McVay is, the knock on Gruden over his tenure as coaching was very impatient, changes on you fast. LeBron has some of that in, he loves the guy, then he starts playing with him, then he sours on him. And I don't have the theory that they're going to tank because McVay almost jumped off a bridge last year, losing a little bit. He's not going to coach a season and suck. And he's too good to ever probably get the top 2 or 3 picks, especially next year with the quarterbacks. But, he loved Matt Stafford 2 years ago. They traded for him. Yeah. Then they extend him. Now he's banged up, and it feels like, they might trade him, or they would definitely listen to it. Well, so he was good enough to give all this money to, and a year later things get weird. I'm a Sean McVay guy, but it does feel he's got a little Gruden in him that he'll change on you fast once he thinks you're not as good as he maybe thought 6 months previously.
So I was told a month ago, and I've said it on the air at Fox, I was told a month ago that the Rams were going to go heavy this offseason to the offense. McVay would come back if there was a commitment to, I'm an offensive coach, the league's pivoted to that, give me guys. So who do they get rid of? Bobby Wagner, Jalen Ramsey, Floyd. They've moved off defensive guys. So they're going to draft. They have a second and 2 thirds. They're probably going to go after an offensive lineman, a wide receiver. They may go after a running back. McVay's like, listen, if I'm going to come back for this thing and have to face the Niners, you got to get me some weapons. You got to get me some help on the offensive side. I mean, of all the people in the Ramsey trade, they got like a 3rd string tight end. I would have thought they would have gone to a backup edge because they don't really have an edge rusher. But listen, McVay had a lot of success early. People that do often get impatient. They haven't had the long road, the struggle like the rest of us, right? So, I get it. You probably see that in tech. You see it in football. That you probably see it in Hollywood when somebody hits it at 28, 32 years old, man, your standards and impatience rise.
The Dolphins, I think over the weekend or maybe late last week, they picked up Tua's fifth-year option. I thought that was nuts, given his risk history. But then when they made this trade, I was like, well, I think you had mentioned last week, and it's come out since, the Brady buzz is not going to die. Well, what did they do?
Right.
They get Vic Fangio. They add Jalen Ramsey. They kind of have their backup plan long-term, just keep Tua under contract. Tom Brady ain't coming to San Jose.
Right.
But Miami, he's getting the taste of the life in Florida now for a couple of years, the no state income tax. I think the Dolphins buzz is about to pick up, and they're equipped. I mean, now their defense was a question mark. Boom, add a star corner. Add Vic Fangio. I mean, that's this team. You see that clip of Tyreek Hill running, dusting those guys in the 60-meter dash. You're the one. I think I saw a clip of you saying that the Tom Brady thing. It's not going to die.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so Tom, it's not like, he's single now. So he's not going to broadcast at Fox. He's going to sit around for a year, just watch football. Tom's connected. And I just think, people say, oh, you spend more time with your family. Kids, after a while, don't want to hang out with mom and dad. They want to hang out with their kids, their peers, right? So I think Brady, he
works 6 months a year. I mean, he gets 6 months with his family.
I know. And whenever you hear, I'm going to go spend time with my family, it's like, guys get off days, even in the season.
Yeah.
You're not in the facility all day. So I think if you have a popular player, Tebow in Denver, and they brought in Peyton Manning, you got to go big. Nobody's going to question Brady fills in for Tua or Peyton Manning for Tebow, because Tua will have success with Mike McDaniels. Hell, he was leading in the Pro Bowl voting last year, right? So if I don't know what's going to happen with Tom Brady. I don't have it sourced, but I did have somebody I trust out of the building, not a Fox employee, say, he may play football. So, it was somebody who's smart, somebody I've trusted for years. So he obviously heard it somewhere. But I said this a year ago, and I'll say it again. I thought Aaron Rodgers in Miami made sense. I really did. Again, a big star, because Tua's got his fans. Tua's going to have success. Nobody's complaining about Rodgers or Brady in Miami. And I think sometimes when you replace a popular, let's face it, last year, up until Thanksgiving, the Dolphins were one of the better stories in the league.
Yeah, they really were. Speaking of not a good story last year was obviously the Aaron Rodgers Packers, who underachieved, missed the playoffs. Feels inevitable that he ends up on the Jets. But my overall take is, one, they don't really have any other options. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt all the time. Derek Carr signed with the Saints.
Yeah.
The guy they drafted number 2 overall, he just stinks. He's just not any good. So as we don't know the parameters of the trade, clearly they already had figured out something to even let him talk. If they don't have to give up a first-round pick, I think it's one of the easiest deals they'll ever do.
Yeah, I think Aaron, the Jets would be better with Aaron, but if I'm Aaron Rodgers and I line everything up, what matters to me? Coach. Matt LaFleur, offensive coach, or Robert Saleh, defensive coach? Check, Packers. Offensive line. Check, Packers. Weapons. Well, Breece Hall's talented, but he's off an injury. Aaron Jones, emerging star at wide receiver, capable tight ends, the power back behind Aaron Jones. It's like weapons, probably slight lean Green Bay, familiarity Green Bay, ease of division and conference. Check, Green Bay. This idea, I don't know where the advantages are. I've got impulsive ownership, a coach, a defensive coach on the hot seat. Their offensive line had some injuries last year, so I don't think it's not the Giants, right? The Jets have some talent, and they'll get it back. It'll be healthier. But, they're counting on a lot of young players. And it's just, Green Bay's got some familiar faces. I know everybody has already got it penciled in. It's the Jets, but I could see Aaron just saying, I'm coming back for one more year, and then I'm retiring. I'm going to Green Bay.
The one with the Jets is last year, he loves his older players, and it took a while for Watson to get going. It took a while, this team is full of young offensive weapons. So is Aaron going to show up in April? Is he going to come to OTAs? Am I paying you $60 million? Can you mesh with my guys? Can you kind of be a member here and not kind of isolate yourself? That would be something I'm sure that they have, reached out, because you can't make this trade if he's just going to show up July 28th when they start training camp, right? I think they'd be good, Colin, though, if he is all in. I mean, he won back-to-back MVPs. This team is really talented. You're right. The head coach, major question mark. But the head coach has nothing to do with the offense, and the offense is his guy. Now, can that guy coach the offense? It's hard to know. It's rocky with Nathaniel Hackett, but that is a driving force, his relationship with that guy.
Yeah, I mean, but you're going to have a lot of firepower in Miami. Mac Jones has Bill O'Brien, best defensive coach in Bill O'Brien. Buffalo's still a pretty stacked roster outside of offensive line. So you don't get the Bears twice. I like Detroit, but Detroit didn't make the playoffs either. So, we're pinning a lot of our hopes on Ben Johnson, a coordinator. I don't know. I think if I was Aaron, I would just stick it out with Green Bay one more year. No owner. I got control of the place, familiarity. Christian Watson at the end of the year was really emerging as a star. So
one thing that happened last week was the Giants spending a lot of money on Daniel Jones. And I lived in Philly, and you've been in the Northeast. The pressure in Boston, in New York, and Philadelphia is difficult. So having guys that can handle that, Daniel Jones has this like Alex Smith-like quality of just pretty mentally tough. But he threw 15 touchdowns last year, and they gave him $82 million. Now, I get you want to retain him, and the best thing is to franchise Saquon Barkley because you want Saquon there, but you don't, you would love to just go year to year, running backs, even on the franchise tag, $10 million. You take that all day long. I just have a hard time thinking that he was going to sniff that money on the open market. Who are they bidding against at that price point? Because in a salary cap league, your guaranteed money impacts how you build your team over a couple years. I thought it was insane.
I remember having a discussion with an agent. I had left ESPN, and John Skipper, who's a nice guy, but he was paying people 7 figures, and there were a handful of people. And I remember talking to an agent and saying, "Who is he bidding against? These are like hosts. They're capable, but they're not like 7-figure people." And John was just handing out contracts. If you take out 2 games against the worst rated defense in the league, Minnesota, look at Daniel Jones' numbers. And you can say, well, he doesn't work with much. Patrick Mahomes, with 3 cast-off receivers and rookie Sky Moore, had 15 touchdown passes by week 5. Daniel Jones just isn't that talented. So, whatever the number comes out to, and it's fuzzy math, I think it's in the 30s somewhere, 36, 32, whatever it is. It still, at some point, is going to limit. They're going to have to hit on draft picks.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to go out and get 2 or 3 offensive players. They have to rebuild the receiving core. They need a tight end, and they have to rebuild outside of left tackle line. There's a lot, and you can't depend on the draft to fill all those needs. You got to pay for some of it.
Well, part of having a star offensive coach is you can get value at certain positions, and you should be able to find quarterbacks of value. And obviously, if you get a Mahomes or whatever, it makes sense even for Andy Reid to give a lot of money. But Brian Daboll's value is to get guys like Daniel Jones to overachieve. Why then pay him? Because again, $82 million, he got $10 million more than Derek Carr, whose resumes aren't even close to comparable.
Right.
I thought the Saints got an incredible deal. I was just watching before his press conference. They got a grown-up in the room, a guy who's now coming off a rough season, so he's going to be motivated. If he had been a free agent after the year that they had made the playoffs 2 years ago, he's getting well over $100 million, right? That season that he played, what he handled with all the adversity. And look at that division. I mean, it looks like Baker Mayfield might go to Tampa. Panthers have no quarterback, and whoever they draft probably is going to take the league by storm. I mean, that division is, I feel the Saints are a borderline like a lock playoff team next year.
Yeah. And going
defense
back,
is good.
Yeah. Going back to Daniel Jones is when people complain about offensive lines, Justin Herbert walked into this league and behind the 32nd rated offensive line had 31 touchdown passes and was told he was starting 5 minutes before the game. Remember that opening game against the Chiefs? Tons of pressure. So you can't use, if you have great talent, you can play. Joe Burrow, year 2, got to a Super Bowl, or year 3, got to a Super Bowl with an awful offensive line. So I don't want to hear about Daniel Jones and a bad offensive line. And they say, well, they don't have great weapons. Again, guys like Mahomes this year, cast-offs. Juju Smith-Schuster, cast-off. The Packers guy, cast-off. Sky Moore, rookie. Tony, who was considered, in New York
garbage.
Giants. Yeah. So, and he made it work. Great quarterbacks make it work. So I think what's happening in Chicago, although I do think Justin Fields is more of there's some real talent there that's non-negotiable. Sure. But I think with Daniel Jones, there's not any wow there for me. Not a wow arm. He's a big guy that can move, but it's not Lamar moving. It's not Kyler. I just don't see the wow. There's no juice to me. I think he's got a really good offensive coach. If Saquon Barkley went down in the first 4 or 5 weeks, worst case scenario, what does that offense look like?
Yeah, they're in major trouble. I think sometimes that organization falls in love with humans, and he's mentally tough. He handled the tough times, but you eventually have to play the position. Like, say what you want about Kirk Cousins, he can give me 35 touchdowns a year. He can produce. Obviously, Jalen's producing. And that's the thing. Like, I found pretty laughable the reaction to the Lamar collusion. No one wants him. Last year, Deshaun Watson was given $230 million, and we all laughed at that's the most insane contract. Only one or two guys in the league would do that. This guy wants that contract, and no one will touch it. Well, we just said last year that contract that he wants is moronic. No one would do that. Right. Good player, but under no circumstances, if I owned a team or ran a team, I would trade for the player if I get him for a normal quarterback contract, but I can't pay him a guy who's been injured, and he doesn't guarantee me anything. He's got one playoff win.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want guaranteed money. You're not guaranteed to play Sunday. Of his last 22 games, he's missed 40%. He's missed 10.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I think nobody wants to say this because it feels like you're taking a shot at Lamar's mom, but he needs an agent. Agents do two things. First of all, teams are now taking shots at Lamar. Why? Because he doesn't have an agent. You would never take a shot at a star player because he has an agent, and an agent represents lots and lots of people. So you don't want to piss off an agent because then he'll steer his clients against you or away from you. When you don't have an agent, and I've had several in my career, it's a little bit like a protective vest, is that the agent keeps you out of the room with your boss so it doesn't get emotional. The agent makes sure they say nice things about you. A good, powerful agent matters. He's using his mom, and reportedly now he's doing some of it. He's moved her off that. It's like, dude, I got no, if my mom represented me or yours did, they'd get emotional. We're their sons. So I think when he did that, I tried to tread lightly and be respectful. You can't have a parent be your agent. Come on.
Now, Charles Robinson wrote a really good article where he got a lot of unnamed people in the league, GMs and agents talking. And his point, listen, Mike McGlinchey is going to sign in a couple days. The owner just gives the GM the thumbs up. But when you're doing a contract like this, $200+ million guaranteed, that's an owner run deal. And these agents go right to the owner. This is not the GM, and the coach ultimately aren't the final say on this one, right? Like they would be with signing a wide receiver, or this is the biggest contract that team has ever given out in the history of the league, potentially. So that's coming from the owner, and he has no direct path to the owner. I mean, it's just, if me and you owned a condo for $200,000, we could figure out how to sell it on our own. If we wanted a $200 million piece of property, we'd probably get some representation to help us out on the deal, right? The amount of money that's on the line is too enormous. Like he's at a major disadvantage, and the Ravens know it, and that's why they did non-exclusive tag. They go, we're not even going to pay you as much, and we're not worried about people bidding for your services because you don't really know what you're doing.
I also think the culture is so strong that between the GM, the owner, the roster, the defense, the assistants, there's kind of a feeling in Baltimore last year. I mean, they went toe-to-toe with the Bengals twice at the end of the year with like third-string guys, and Cincinnati needed a miracle touchdown to win one of those games. So I think they look at themselves and think, we're really at an A level in terms of drafting and developing. If we have to go get Max Duggan in the second round, or we have to go get somebody we like, we will. So, I mean, they've won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, Trent Dilfer. They gambled on Lamar Jackson to some degree. A lot of people thought he wouldn't be great. They've been able to find quarterbacks who others bailed on, who are different, and they've got success with all of them. So I always just sort of trust the Ravens to figure it out. Totally I have agree. A rule in life. You don't have to always hire an expert. Hire smart people, and they'll figure out complex problems. Baltimore's really good at that.
Speaking of a team that's trying to find their identity, the big trade, the draft trade that happened, I guess would that have been Friday night. On the Panther side, this feels like it's got Dave Tepper written all over it. You know, he's financial wheeler and dealer. He's getting bored. He's getting tired of losing because it's a lot to give up, Colin, for this. Trevor Lawrence not in this draft, you know, and it's been reported they don't even know exactly who they're taking. Last time the Niners tried to do something like that, I would not operate making a trade without the player that you know, just to figure out 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah, this is one of those, you know, if Bryce Young hits, then it looks like a brilliant move. But I thought Chicago essentially solved, you know, people banged on the Chase Claypool move, but now their receiving core is DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, very capable young tight end, Darnell Mooney, a solid 2, and Chase Claypool. So they don't really have to go after a wide receiver in the draft, and they've got multiple extra picks. So they can attack the interior offensive. They're going to get McGlinchey, the right tackle from the Niners.
Yeah.
They drafted some offensive linemen last year. A couple of them can play. You know, they can kind of go solve their defense so Justin Fields doesn't have to be in shootouts. But, I mean, Cole Kmet, Mooney, Claypool, but DJ Moore was getting 1,000 yards a season with Kyle Allen, Darnold, Baker Mayfield. I couldn't believe. I understand giving away a first and 2 seconds. Throwing DJ Moore, and by the way, so you draft a young quarterback. You just lost your best receiver for him.
It's insane.
I didn't like that addition at all. I would have given you a corner. I'd have given you something. I would not have given you your best. I wouldn't. If I'm Carolina, I'm not giving you DJ Moore.
They just extended him last year, so he's under contract for the foreseeable future. I thought this is kudos to Ryan Pace because he can do 2 things. One, find out if Fields can play. Now he's got weapons. And if he can't, he has the Panthers pick. They're probably not going to be great. And if his team stinks, they'd have 2 high picks to go up and get one of these quarterbacks next year. So that they're actually getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah, Ryan Poles is the kid. He got a receiver, Velas Jones out of Tennessee, who played at USC. I could have told him he can't track the ball. He couldn't at USC. He could never track the ball. So I still don't trust this organization to draft and develop offensive players. But I do think what happens after that trade, John, is now we have clarity. There'll be no more excuses. Their running backs are serviceable. Cole Kmet's a very nice young tight end. Now you have a real grown-up wide receiver group. They're going to pay for a right tackle. Their offensive line last year rated 14th. It wasn't the Giants. It wasn't 32nd. It was 14th. And they're going to upgrade it, so it's going to be a reasonable offensive line. What it gives you, John, now whatever Justin Fields does, this is the truth. He has more than enough talent now. You can't say he doesn't have this. Claypool, Mooney, DJ Moore are 3 very nice professional wide receivers.
See, and I think on the Panther side, you just wonder if Tepper gets involved on who they ultimately want to pick, and it's not the coach and not the general manager's decision. I think Bryce Young is an elite player. He's just short, which can be risky. But we've seen him 2 years ago play. They played Georgia twice in a month. And went toe-to-toe with them with a defense full of 11 pros and like first-round pros. Yeah. But he's just small. And, Anthony Richardson, I was texting with Daniel Jeremiah because Anthony Richardson, I said, what round would those guys have gone in when you first broke into the league? Guys like Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, who are just big physical guys, but, have a long way to go. He's like, those guys would have been mid-round picks. Now both of them are going to go in the top 5. So this notion that position, it's so nuanced, it's so hard. You can't just draft like you can a defensive tackle and hope he figures it out because time and time they don't. And whoever they pick has this enormous pressure. I've seen it with Trey Lance. All these picks, the whole trade, it just hangs over you forever if things don't go well. It's hard.
Well, the Colts, I think, should move up to 3 because if somebody moves up in front of them, they're going to get the 4th quarterback in an average quarterback draft. Yeah. That would worry me. Now, again, there's Max Duggan's going to be a 2nd or a 3rd round guy, and there's a lot of people that think, a team like Indy could get him. I'll tell you this about, I had somebody text me on this inside the league. It's pretty interesting. So I said, Will Levis's family has some Ivy League connections. He's a 4-point student. He's a big, thick kid, good arm. And somebody texted me in the league and said, look how chiseled he is. He said, name the great quarterbacks that are chiseled. They don't exist. Yeah. Is that when you ever go to the gym and see a weightlifter try to play basketball, how stiff they are?
There's no fluidity to them.
no fluidity. And so this person said this is a danger sign. He's jacked, he's ripped, and he comes off sometimes as a little bit stiff. He doesn't come off as fluid. And he's strong. He's a smart kid. But the Will Levis stuff is interesting because, there's so much of it you like. Ivy League family, huge arm. His numbers look like Eli Manning's out of Ole Miss, a non-traditional SEC quarterback who, won 17 games in 2 years for a basketball school. It kind of feels Eli. But the person who texts me is just like, go look up the chiseled quarterbacks. It's like you see Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning with a tight shirt on. They're big. They got more of a chest, but you don't see ripped guys. It's not what you have to be loose. That's why plyometrics and Brady. You've got to be loose. You got to be able to be flexible and move your feet, move your hips. And Levis is just ripped and jacked.
One story I heard years ago, remember there was a lot of pressure when the Texans had the number 1 overall pick to potentially take Blake Bortles. They ended up taking Clowney. And Bill O'Brien had got Bortles on the board and just thought he was kind of a meathead. Nice guy or whatever, but just not, Peyton Manning. You weren't just going to draft the guy number 1 overall. And obviously he went a couple picks later and it didn't work out. And I've heard from some people that Levis might have, again, this is all relative. I mean, he's a high level guy, just some meathead football qualities, which works at a lot of positions, because they're, in the weight room. Where Bryce Young, you read some of these stories, the dude's like a football savant. And to me, if he was 6'3", there wouldn't even be a question. And that's where CJ Stroud in that game against Georgia, if he had been playing like that his entire career, mobile, making plays behind the line of scrimmage with his legs to then throw, I think he would be kind of a no-brainer 1 or 2 pick. But I just know the way these GMs think that just the 1 game sample size is hard because that's never how he played. He was just a pocket quarterback and he played with, 7 All-Pros on the outside.
Also, outside of Michigan, Ohio State never plays a conference opponent with even talent. Their wide receivers are significantly open.
Not even close, yeah.
Right. In the SEC, as good as Bama is, LSU, Georgia, they got the same dudes.
Yeah.
And Texas A&M now. You may not think Jimbo can coach. They got 5-star dudes everywhere. And so, when you see a wide receiver and Bryce Young's hitting him, he's got a Georgia first-round corner up against him.
Yeah.
You see a lot of these Ohio State highlights. These guys are wide open. Now, CJ's accurate. He had a good combine. That doesn't mean a ton to me, but
he throws a beautiful ball. He throws a beautiful ball out of his hand.
Yeah. But we've never had an Ohio State quarterback of note in professional football in the history of the NFL. And there's probably a reason, is that they have so separated. And over the last several years, because of a coach they have, Brian Hartline, who may be the best recruiting coach in the country, they're getting like only 5-star guy now. That's all they get at Ohio State. It's become the best wide receiving program in the country, Alabama and Ohio State. So you're playing up against Purdue's corners, Minnesota's corners, Illinois' corners, outside of Michigan, maybe at Penn State, Michigan State's corners. So it is harder to evaluate. I said this for years. It's like, I didn't know how good, Tua was. I'm like, even in the SEC, they had like 2 Devontae Smith, and they have all these first-round guys. I'm like, this is better than the Patriots. So, but I just think with CJ Stroud, there's a lot I like, but there's a lot of easy throws if you're a Buckeye quarterback.
Yeah. One other thing on the draft, I haven't heard your thoughts on. This guy is an incredible talent, Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle. Right. But he went to the combine. I think he's the best player.
Yeah.
And I think most teams would have him ranked that way too. He went to the combine, had to leave, check himself into jail, post bond, come back to the combine over a couple people that died, and he was clearly in another car right there, and no one ever knew about that until that moment. I'm sorry, Colin. That he had some other question marks. You're drafting the person as much as the player. I went to the All-Pro team last year. There really weren't any low-character guys on the team. It is full of just Mahomeses and Kelce's and Bosa's and Fred Warner's and just pretty locked and loaded guys. I'd have a hard time pulling the trigger when you can't trust the human being. I don't care how good a player he is.
No, I think it's a real thing. I think the sport asks so much of you physically, mentally, emotionally, that it's a test. Football is a constant test of your character, your soul, your communication. It's a complicated sport. You have a real playbook. So I think football weeds out people who aren't committed. Jimmy Johnson still tells me the number one thing he always looked for was just football intelligence. Could you learn things quickly? There's a reason half the league is undrafted, because those guys learn quick, high character, good values, excellent teammates. They're not the most physically gifted. I mean, can you imagine if the NBA was half undrafted? I mean, hell, the NBA is mostly all top 18 picks. It's a talent league. Football's different, John. It asks, it's such a pressurized one game a week, physical, regulated level of violence, a playbook, that if you're not buttoned up, even guys who look like Baker Mayfield, who's just a little cocky, Johnny Manziel, it eats him up. Yeah. And we also love it so much more than any other domestic sport. It's like soccer. It's like the English Premier League in the UK. The pressure is so massive. You have a bad game, you don't play until Sunday. You get nothing but ripped by your local media for a week. It's not like the NBA. You got a bad Sunday game, Tuesday night in Denver, you score 40. Nobody cares. So the Jalen Carter stuff, I think your point's well taken. If you start looking at the all-pro teams, very few low character guys last or make a difference in this league.
This week I always thought, even when I was in the NFL growing up, this week could be a little overrated because most great players never hit free agency, and the ones that do get franchise tagged. But now the influx of all these young, aggressive general managers, the cap has boomed. So the money, all these owners have cash. The trades are the curveball these last couple years, really probably last 5 or 6 years, that have added an element to this week and the next couple weeks that just hasn't been there, before. Because the NBA and baseball always was heavy in trades, and football never truly was. A lot of draft trades, but just sweet players, plug and play. That's become very, very in vogue. And it's already happening. Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Rodgers. But I wouldn't be shocked if there are 3 or 4 that we don't even know of. Last year it happened. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, buckle up because it's coming.
John, this used to be March Madness week. All you talked about Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was March Madness. If Aaron Rodgers tomorrow at noon says I'm a Jet, it will just bury March Madness talk for 3 days. So one of the things the NFL's always done is they realize it's a television show and they treat it like it. They have manipulated their schedule. They've gone after college basketball. They've gone after the NBA. I've been saying this for years. If I ran the NBA, I would start the season on the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. So you can't compete with Thanksgiving weekend. The college football that weekend is unbelievable. The NFL's unbelievable. So Monday, guys like every talk show, NFL. Then Monday Night Football, Tuesday, NFL. Wednesday is everybody's kind of exhausted from
Smart
Thursday.
Move,
for everybody's exhausted from like 4 days of heavy football. Wednesday, start the NBA season, cut 12 games out of it. And I think that would be manipulating the schedule. That's essentially what the NFL's been doing my entire sportscasting career, figuring out these little holes. Free agency now is right smack dab. Because as you said earlier, these guys they're all on the phone tonight.
Yeah.
And I think it starts tomorrow. You're legally allowed to get on the phone. So Aaron Rodgers, clearly the Jets are offering Green Bay something. Because the deal is not only in the works, the structure's probably there because Green Bay had to allow the Jets to talk to him. Yeah. So the Jets and the Packers, they've got the deal. The deal's done. They're just waiting for Aaron to make up his mind.
And it behooves him to figure this out sooner than later because then the Jets can do other things. Yeah, I'd expect him to be a Jet. Honestly, it could happen. Break tomorrow morning on your show, right? This week, probably before Wednesday, that we get some finality there. Who do you like NCAA tournament?
Well, I try to watch the good teams. I've watched Gonzaga, UCLA, Kansas. I watched Texas a couple of times. I've seen Duke. I think Duke's playing really good. So I've seen Duke play 5 times, but it's all 4 of the 5 were at home.
Yeah.
I think Kansas, Bill Self out of the hospital. Kansas, I saw CBS was picking a lot of upsets, like Marquette in the Final Four. I'm like, all right, I would go with heavy favorites. This is a year without a great team. And so what's going to happen? Take the veteran coaches. Take Mark Few, take Bill Self, take the veteran coaches, because there's not a huge gap in talent. And so I'll lean on coaching. I think UCLA's coach is really good, but I didn't see all year long. I watched Duke a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, okay, they got it kind of cinched up. It looks pretty tight. But I think if you told me Kansas, Duke, that kind of level team won it, I do think all year long we heard that Gonzaga, it was kind of an off year. I don't know. I watched them win their conference championship. I watched them play
St. Mary's by about 50. And St. Mary's is good.
I watched it. I was like, I don't know. They got a dominant player in Timmy. It's like, I think it'll be mostly favorites winning. I'm trying to think of an upset. Tennessee plays Louisiana. Everybody's told me that Louisiana's going to win that game. That's what all the CBS experts said.
The Big Ten's got to be pretty fired up. UCLA hoops is rolling, and USC's got Lincoln Riley, and they're trending up. I mean, it couldn't have gotten much better timing for that conference.
Hey, listen, if Oregon and Washington go to the Big Ten, now they'll only get half a financial share, which would still beat the Pac-12. But if they go, I feel bad for the conference. I really do.
Yeah, it's in trouble.
Because I love Pac. I think Oregon State's got one of the best young coaches in the sport. Utah's excellent. I like what Jed Fish is doing at Arizona. It'll just bum me out. It really will.
It's sad. Well, Colin, have a good week. Sure, talk some Aaron Rodgers and watch little hoops at the end of the week. Should be fun.